All right, hey y'all, before we get started, we just wanted to let you know we had some technical difficulties with this episode that affected the quality of our audio. Now, that's not normally how we do things, but we thought the conversation was important enough, so we sent the audio to our editor, and he fixed it up as best he could. So we hope you enjoy it, our conversation with Stephen Mansfield.
Stephen, I'm excited about this.
Good, man.
First of all, I would say we appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Yes, very much so.
Thank you.
This is a podcast that, Winston and I started this. This is episode, I'm going to go 9. You just said it, and I forget I was in 9. All about dude stuff.
Good.
Dude stuff.
Southern dude stuff?
Well, we happen to be Southern dudes, as are you.
Yeah.
You got here as fast as you could. We accept you into the family.
Well, thank you.
With open arms. He's dualistic. I think it's DC, right? And Nashville?
Well, and I grew up in Europe, so I but I'll play whatever game I have to play to get in a bug.
Hey, Europe, the South, we both love our shotguns, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you give me a good over-under and let's go.
I'm more a pistol guy, but I love how to do a shotgun.
I love it.
I've killed my share of whitetail and coms.
Oh, man, a turkey hunter.
Oh, yeah. So, Doug.
Did you notice that I'm going to point out this painting right here? This is one
Oh, wow.
my most...
You did
this? No. You know what? Yeah, I painted that. No. That was painted by a friend of mine. Bradley Gordon is an artist out of Oxford, Mississippi.
Well, that's a good place to be from.
Yeah.
From the South.
Yes, absolutely.
Come on.
And he is a heck of an artist.
That is beautiful.
And so he painted that tongue for me a few years ago. But man, there's nothing quite like turkey hunting.
My only brag as a hunter is that I once held the Tom Beard record in Taylor County, Texas.
Okay, what kind of things are we talking about?
10 minutes. No, I mean, maybe you see some too,
But like, how long was the beard, or was it a number of beards?
It was dragging the per 14 inches.
14 inches?
Yeah, Texas, they grow them big.
Do you remember if it was multiple beards? Have you ever seen that type of bird?
I heard of it. Yeah, trust me. My brother-in-law took me out, said, shoot this way, and I really ticked them off by my,
Yeah.
Because they're hunters, they have every kind of gun in the world. Yeah. We're pretty well off. And I just went out the window, bam, killed something.
Killed a
set a record on
and set the record.
I took that record book in there and showed them. I framed it in their offices. I put it up in their offices. I wanted them to know every day and day. Because they were amazing hunters, and I went out to the first day and kind of
rubbing it in their license.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, took no skill.
I love it. As we've been thinking about kind of like issues that men face, things that might be unique to men. One of the things that has come up a lot in our conversations has been the difficulty that I feel like men face in building deep, real, lasting friendships with one another. Is that something that you feel like women are just more generally gifted at going deeper in friendships earlier?
Absolutely, no question.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, let me tell you, the science helps us a little bit. Men, they do these studies where they take little boys, little girls into a room where the scientists can observe them. Little girls go in the room, kind of eyeball each other a little bit. Before long, they'll take 2 chairs, turn them facing each other. And one of the little girls will say, I like your hair. And that's it. They're off. Boys take longer to come together. And when they do, they put the chairs side by side. Look out at the world, and finally one of them will say, I bet I can beat you to that tree. Bet we can set that door on fire. That we can get Tommy to pull us in a wagon. They start thinking of things to do. So bonding for males reflects that early experience. Men pretty much need to be doing things together. I mean, you guys know the worst thing you can do in a church to get some guys to relate to each other is circle them up in the fellowship hall, look one meaningfully in the face and say, how you feel it, Tom? Tell us about your feelings. That dude's never coming back, nor is anybody else.
Yeah.
But you say, the widow whatever, I know I'm talking Southern here, but the widow whatever needs to have her roof redone on Saturday. We're all going to go over there and we're going to do it, and we're all going to get a beer about 5 o'clock. Guys will show up, and guys will get to know each other better. Not just because they're talking, because they're watching each other. I'm watching how you guys
sizing each other up.
There's this guy who's always talking, but he's not doing nothing but getting water. He never lifts a thing, never does anything. We all know that guy. We've seen him before. We caught him in our lives on our football teams. Then there's the other guy who's quiet, strong experience. He's getting a lot done. He's not talking a lot. You respect him. You like him. You want to go to lunch with him. You want to know him. We get to know each other well on the move. And when we're connected to each other, when we're doing something together. And most men now in our modern world don't get into that situation very often. Think about it, office rats or whatever you're doing. Most of us don't do a lot. We don't tend to have the hobbies our fathers had. Again, that's not the case with Southern manhood, which we're talking about today, but that's still the case with most men, especially young men. They just don't have hobbies. They don't have anything they do. They don't have anything to invite other men into because they're not doing anything but sitting on their phones.
I like that. I want to talk about Stephen for a second. I want to hear about you. I know about you, and I'm a little intimidated by you, to be honest. Me too. Because I have only experienced you from stage, right? Doing Devos. I would look up your page where you wrote, "Manly men do this." And if I was just needing a little bit of inspiration, I would go back through that list and just kind of, get some inspiration. And it's a great list.
Thanks.
So I've always had an amazing amount of respect for you. So when we decided to do male friendship, you were the first one on my list because of my experience with you from afar. So now you're in the room, and it's pretty cool. So
thank you. That's
thanks.
very kind. Very kind.
Thanks for being here. But tell us about you. I mean, we know you're from Europe.
Yeah, the most defining experience of my early life was I was the son of a U.S. Army officer and a military intelligence officer at that. So I grew up, believe it or not, part of my youth behind the Iron Curtain during the Cold War.
Wow.
And that profoundly affected me. I mean, I literally could go to a wall down the street from where I lived, climb up on a rack, and look over into East Germany, look over into communist territory. It's just true. And any military brats who have been there know that I'm telling the truth. And then came back to the States, being bigger than the average bear. I was good at football, got recruited to play football. But I had a religious conversion, became a Christian, and during the summer of my 18th year, turned down the football scholarship. I just had this innate knowledge that if I went football, I was going to mess it up. I was going to get in with the girl or the drugs or whatever. I was just young. So I turned it down, went to a Christian university, and it was profound for me. So graduated from that university, went to help my in-laws, then in-laws pastor a church, earned more degrees than a guy ought to along the way, and always knew that I wouldn't pastor forever. So about 20 years pastoring, but
Did you really?
I didn't just that. Yeah, I just
Where was that?
nothing was there. I pastored in West Texas for 10 years and then here in Nashville for 10 years. And it was great for me, but I just knew I wasn't going to do it forever. I wanted to do, at the midpoint of my life, what I'm doing now, which is to get more directly into culture. I had a feeling there was some media there for me. I knew I'd probably write, speak. I mean, I didn't know it would go this far, to be frank with you, and I'm not bragging. I'm just saying, who could have known?
Sure.
And you have your dreams, but you don't know how far they're going to go. Yeah. So at about the age of 44, I transitioned out of pastoring and began to do what I'm doing now. And by God's grace, had a couple of big New York Times best-selling books, and that repositioned me financially, in the media, everywhere, and everything I'm doing now comes out of that thrust. So that's what I do. And because I care about men and want to see us turn manhood in our generation in a positive direction, I spend about a third to a half of what at the time that I have now, focused on men. So I'm really glad to be here on this podcast.
That's awesome. I didn't know a lot of that, but I always knew you were a great speaker and had a ton of hours on your page.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I really enjoy speaking, really enjoy writing. And I think what part of my appeal as a speaker is I'm easily bored. So most speakers have bored me in my life. So to use humor, to use illustrations, to pick on people, pick on yourself, to have some fun. Why can't it be fun, right? Especially if you're talking men, for heaven's sakes. Yeah. So the T-shirt I walk around with when I'm writing a speech is "Do not be boring."
I do have to say though, you said in your book that you are a self-prescribed introvert.
Yes.
Which fascinates me because the thought of pastoring a church as a fellow introvert sounds exhausting to me. And so how did you do that?
Well, the main difference...
Where do you get your energy?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. The main difference between an introvert and extrovert is how they charge. It's how they recharge. And a lot of us are introverts who are good in public. I'm not bragging, but I consider myself good in public. You see me on stage. Yep. I came up here. I talk to you guys. You don't see me lay down and saying, "Don't talk to me." I'm bullshit.
I would not have pegged you as an introvert
exactly
until I read this.
But the art of being an introvert is that you know how to manage it. So I hang with people. I'm pastoring church at an event, signing books, all this stuff, in Congress up there, helping them doing things. But I know, and my wife definitely knows, there comes a moment when I've got to, in fact, she takes me to some of these national parties, but she's in the music industry. And I work myself through the crowd, and then I find the quiet room in the back of the house. We have a book I've not read. And she comes and finds me 3 hours later, going, what the heck? People are asking where you are.
My battery hit zero.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you got to know how to manage this. But a lot of us are confusing because I'm definitely an introvert. Every jargon, my whole experience tells me that. Okay. But I have to. I do well in public, and you won't tell while we're sitting here. You won't feel any loss of energy or interest.
Right.
But if we did this all afternoon, I'd shake your hand, say goodbye, let's get lunch. I'd go home, and I'd say I need a couple hours.
Yeah.
And that's just how it works.
I so relate to all that.
And it's good because I'm an author. I spend lots of time sitting at a desk by myself.
In thought.
Exactly. And if you can't do that, some people are so extrovert they can never do those jobs. Yeah. And so I'm grateful that I can sit by myself on long play flights or in my office for days if I have.
Love it.
Yeah.
That things. Did you prefer your time in Texas over your time in Tennessee? Oh boy. That's kind of the age-old debate, like Texas, Tennessee.
Apparently they have bigger turkeys down here.
Which one do you prefer, Stephen?
I got to tell you, I prefer Nashville, but let me tell you why. When I was out in Abilene, Texas, and I pastored there for 10 years. Prior to that, I had mainly been in Europe, and then I went to university in Tulsa for 5 years. And when I got up to West Texas, I got to tell you, it was like a foreign country to me, real. And Abilene is a town, lovely people, but it's a town of 100,000 with a mentality of a town of 10,000. And I was the Yankee. And I just thought I would play with them and joke about Texas and joke about football and joke about the Cowboys and all that kind of stuff. They don't play.
Yeah.
They don't play. And
you can't joke about Texas.
No. So I didn't handle it all that well. I would even joke about, I got to get on Abilene every so often. Just playing, just having fun. Yeah. Oh, man, I just didn't handle it at all. By the time I got to Nashville, I was a little smarter, a little more comfortable. And Nashville is a little bit more cosmopolitan. When you grew up in Berlin, Germany, Abilene, Texas, is a long stretch of it.
Yeah.
So I didn't handle it that well. Church did well, did some degrees, loved it, loved the culture, still go back there and feel great. Love pralines, love barbecue, love it all. But no, I didn't do that well in Abilene.
How's your
Pralines and cream.
He's got a pretty good cowboy.
I got biker boots on today.
Biker boots.
I got some boots. By the way, I was just in Africa, and we had to help cull a herd, not because we were big game hunting. We shot some animals, and one that we had to kill because it was wounded. We didn't wound it, somebody else did. I shot an ostrich, and there will be some ostrich boots on me very soon with African ostrich on. And I love that. Show you.
I love
all that stuff. I love it.
This book, so you wrote this in 2016, is that right?
Yeah.
I just picked it up last week, read it. First of all, fantastic read. Super easy read, which I love. I feel like we need to appreciate that too. More of these easily digestible books that we can consume in a short amount of time. So I loved the format of it. I am curious because I think we all recognize, and you spoke very eloquently about it, it is more difficult for men to develop these relationships. Is there, I can only speak from my own personal experience, but I'm curious what you would have to say about this. Do you feel like men in general is it a fear-based difficulty that we bring on ourselves? Is there fear involved in why that might be more of a struggle?
I don't think it's primarily fear. I think it's largely ignorance, and that it is the surprise of the trajectory of your life, okay? Most of us haven't seen true male relationships modeled for us, okay? My father's an Army officer. He's got buddies he's playing golf with for a year, and then we move. I never saw him have lifetime relationships.
Yeah.
Just because of the military thing. I don't know about your dads, but of most men in our generation, all the surveys show, and certainly my experience with men shows, that they haven't seen it. So that's number one. If you haven't had it modeled for you, you're not going to go replicate it. The other thing, though, is that guys get caught off guard by what happens in their life, right? Elementary school, high school, college, military, whatever. Relationships are easy, man. You're in the dorm, you're working at the same pizza joint, whatever. You're on the same football team. Get married, get into your profession, have a couple kids, maybe a house, buy a rent, whatever. Doesn't matter right now, but you're busy. And all that's isolating you, and nobody's full to that because most dads aren't talking to their sons. Most dads aren't narrating the journey. That's one of the biggest things I think men are missing today is they didn't have anybody narrating the masking journey. Yeah. So I'm saying right now, dude hits 35, and he's suddenly isolated. And I'll say, who are your best friends? And almost all the time when I ask that question, because I've done this a lot, I know it's coming. He'll say, well, my best friend's Joe was in my wedding. Well, how long ago was your wedding? 5 years ago. When was the last time you talked to Joe? 3 years ago. See, psychologists call those rust friends. It's the memory of close friendship we don't have right now. Because we're in our isolated house, we've got all those honeydews to do. Thank God. I'm all for it. Got the kids to take care of. We're trying to keep, from weighing 800 pounds. And we're at the job. And at the most, we might have a golf game. But even that, most of us don't have at that age. So the bottom line is the man suddenly wakes up and finds himself isolated. The surveys show, again, I like to come from science as much as possible, so it's not just my opinion. The average guy in his late 30s, early 40s can't name a best friend. He can't name who he would call if he was out of town and his wife's up in her 90, flitting around the house 3 a.m. Oh my God, the pipes are broken. Who do you trust to go over there and handle that with character? Yeah, right? Who do you trust to get your son out of jail if he got picked up speeding at 4 a.m. and you're across the country? Who do you trust to handle that with Gary? The average guy can't name somebody who's another male who has inspired, and somebody he actually knows, not somebody on TV. Well, think about that, right? So I think it's a little different than what most guys think. Most guys think, well, we're men, we don't really bond that well. I think that's crap. I think men bond very well when they have a chance to bond. They don't have a motto for them. Their life takes over. It's easy early on, then it gets hard, and they don't know what to do. They don't know the way out. They know how to build a band of brothers, and you've got to be intentional about it and build that stuff. And so I'm concerned about, certainly a Western man, American man for sure, for those very reasons.
I did not have that modeled for me, for sure. I cannot think of a friend, a buddy that my father ever had. I can't think of a single one.
Yeah. You're typical. You're not. Yeah. I don't want you to feel like a freak because you're normal in American experience.
And it is, and I think maybe I have a difficult relationship with my dad. It's non-existent. It's toxic. But I think for a long time, and when you and I discussed this a little bit, for a long time I felt almost adversarial to other men.
Yeah.
I think because of the wounds that I'm carrying around, because of my relationship with my dad. I'm curious to I think we all agree this is a problem for men.
It's a huge problem.
This is a huge problem, an epidemic, you might say. What are some of the solutions? What are some of the cures for this ailment that I feel like a lot of us are suffering from?
Well, if I could just make it worse because 30 seconds before I give the solution.
I love when people make it worse.
Well, I want
Problem's not done yet.
Yeah, I want your audience to know that male suicide is an all-time high in America. And I've been involved in doing the postmortems on those suicides in some cases. And that means the suicide note that's left or what they told the last person they talked to, psychological postmortem they call it. And in almost every case that I've ever been involved with, and a guy was saying, there's not a man who knows who I am or cares who I am. A man. Now, there might have been his mother or his girlfriend or a prostitute or whatever else, but no man. In England, if you're 50 or older and a male, and you don't die of a cardiac issue, you have almost certainly died of suicide. And those psychological postmortems show the same thing. There's not a man who knows about me and cares about me. We're talking about heterosexual men nowadays. Some people are wondering. So it's worse than we think.
What struck me is that you said that you have memories of friends, the Rust friends from 3 years ago, and then you mentioned ignorance. It's almost like we are unaware of our isolation.
Exactly.
Because we feel like we have a certain amount of attachments that, man, this is the norm. I do hang out with, or I'm surrounded by. I've got a lot of texting buddies or whatever it is. We can, what I hear you saying is we can have a lot of relationships with other men, but they don't do the job.
No.
We're not doing the job.
No. Winston, the problem is that massive men, excuse me, are awash in a sea of casual relationship. I'm a writer, so sometimes I'll go all Shakespearean with my language, forgive me. But they are awash with casual relationships.
That's good.
I mean, and I don't mean to accuse your friends or my friends, because I've got a lot of amazing friends. But the question's got to be, do they care whether you live or die? Are they there because you're a riot over the beer? Are they there because you can hit a softball? Are they there because of you got a great house and whatever you throw to parties? Or are they actually concerned about your soul? Because a band of brothers, I know I'm jumping ahead, it's the questions here, but a band of brothers is a band of guys who are intense friends, but they're committed to the project of each of them becoming a great and good man. And most men's friends don't care whether they're getting better or not. don't care if they're descending. They actually think it's cute when you're descending into an alcohol problem, right? Because you're acting out and being stupid and grabbing the girl at the bar and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so you're entertainment for them, even though your life's falling apart. So the reality is, men are in crisis, in stunning crisis. And the reason I say that it's not fear, it's ignorance, is that there hasn't anybody there saying, look, you get out of college, you start developing the art of building a band of brothers. It's been easy in high school, easy in college, easy in the military, easy in elementary school. You don't do that in the next few years. You will find your stuff alone in midlife, and that's when men start to kill themselves. It's that start. If your dad had sat you down and said that, I'm not accusing you of what your dad is, obviously, or my dad, if they'd sat us down and said that, we would have begun to get educated about the needs of a man in life. Very few fathers ever sit down and say, "Now, son, here's the way it is with men. You just let it drift. You're going to be screwed.
Yeah.
Here's what you have to do. You got to build this thing intentionally."
One of the biggest things that struck me in your book was that, which I identified with as a pattern. I don't think this happens to everybody, but there comes a point in a man's life that he goes through something. He hits a crisis. He hits a wall. And I think the realization that seemed like you had in your crisis was that I can't do this alone.
Right.
Whatever I have in my support system with other males isn't working. And I related to that because when I went through what I would call a crisis, that's when I realized I need other men in my life that can, grab my shoulders when I'm thinking everything's falling apart and be there for it.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that pattern? Is that, we either listen to pain or wisdom as a teacher.
Yeah.
And it seemed like, for me too, it was pain that caused this realization of like the way that I prioritize and value other friendships. Because, after you get married for 5-10 years, it's your family, it's your wife. Those are your primary relationships. And then all of a sudden something happens to you and there's a void of that. I mean, a really large part of I call it male intimacy. I mean, it really is like everything in my life between you and me, we know it. We know it all.
Right.
And you're going to walk with me through it.
Yeah.
Tell me about that crisis moment and you don't have to go into detail, but just how did that influence your realization for the importance of male friendship?
Well, I don't mind a bit talking about mine, but I want to say real quickly that if anyone listening to us, including the three of us sitting here, are able to say that my family, my wife, they're my best friends, they're my main relationships, we're already in trouble. I think you may have some sense of what my wife is. I'm crazy about my wife. Our relationship is rowdy and fun and kind of famous in Nashville a little bit. Because she's so well known in the music industry and all that. I'm crazy about my wife. But I'll look her in the eyes, having just kissed her, and say, if you're my best friend, I'm screwed. Right? And I know that sounds all romantic and sweet, and we say it at the altar, you only want you to be my best friend. But a man needs to have this lover and his wife and be crazy for each other, chasing each other around the house and building a great family and all that stuff. But man, you've got to have men in your life. I'm a better husband because I've got men who are on me about being a good husband. I travel a lot, as you probably have some sense of, and I've got men who will call, how much you gone, and how much is she with you, how many days are you gone, what's going on, I don't care how famous you are, how much money you made, what's up? I've got some ex-NFL guys in my band of brothers that they will just pound me. So my point is that I don't want it to get to the point where a guy goes through a crisis. In my case, I moved to Nashville to be on the staff of one of its largest churches at the time, and very quickly became the senior pastor of that church just because of changes and some gifts I have and what have you. And it was all very successful. But I had what I would have told you at the time were really close friends, but they all worked for me. The success of the church was that I had a bunch of guys my age, fun, rowdy, we hung out together, we worked out, but they all worked for me. And when a marital crisis hit, I've been divorced once, and this is that moment. When a marital crisis hit, and I voluntarily left the church, and because I didn't want to take the church through a divorce like some famous pastors do, I just didn't think I should. Those guys, like a lot of them, they're just so conflicted. Oh my God, this is my job, my livelihood, and I love the congregation. And Stephen's leaving, and gosh, I loved him, but I guess if somebody's got to go, Stephen's got to go. And within a matter of weeks, I was alone. I voluntarily left my house to try to fix the marriage, and I had voluntarily left my church And and my best friends were on the other side of the world, and military guys or whatever. And that was the crisis for me. And I literally drove around on Sundays when I had traditionally been in church without a soul to talk to. And it was foolish of me. I shouldn't have built with people who worked for me. I shouldn't have built with people only like me, meaning clergy, pastors, and that kind of thing. I should have built more broadly, and I would have been in better shape. And that's actually what helped rescue me. People outside of that experience came to me, and one guy literally said, "You're a cigar chomping pagan kind of guy," who certainly wasn't the only guy in my world. But he said, "Well, you may be an SOB, but you're my SOB. I gotcha." And it was healing to my soul, even though it was crass and all that. But for a senior pastor of a large national church to have some guy say, "Well, you're an SOB, but I got you, my brother," that was healing to me. And of course, I had other men of God in my life. So, very King, your father-in-law, by the way. So all that to say, this was healing for me. And so what I try to do is help men understand you can't be in that situation. You can't get there. And you would have looked at me. I'm gonna get real graphic here for you. You would have looked at me at that time, the head of a church of thousands, kind of young for that position, lots of buddies. We palled around. We joked on stage. You would have thought Mansfield doesn't lack for a relationship in his world, and it all stripped away within weeks because it wasn't built on a common commitment to noble and great manhood and our betterment. It was built on the common job and then the rowdiness we had together. Well, that stuff goes away. I'm not accusing anybody, by the way. If any of those buddies are listening to this, hot dog, love you. But that was not what I needed at the time. You need somebody to kick down the door and make sure you're doing okay. They have to.
We're going to go back and say something about the wife thing again because I think it's really important. And I'm just going to say it out loud. Our wives can't be our best friends because they're not men. Right. I mean, they're just never going to see it, as are we from a female standpoint. They're never going to see it the way we do.
The problem with calling your wife your best friend is it displaces someone. I want my wife to be my lover and my romantic partner. In my case, she's not business partner, not just because we have a household budget. We actually run companies together. And she's all I want to touch, and I'm all the stuff. But to say she's my best friend replaces you or somebody else who we might know who needs to be my best male friend. And now Bev is a smart woman, and she's learned even from the things that I write, do, and teach. And she is the most passionate. If I'm not with my band of brothers, she starts shoving me out the door. Where are they? Go get them. You guys go hunt. Go. You don't jump out of airplanes. Go do what you got to do. If she can tell, that whale that when it's in captivity, its tail curls. Yeah. And she can tell when my tail is curling. I don't mean physically. It's good. And she can go, no. You're better for me. You're a better lover. You're a better business guy. You're more creative. You're greater with the kids and the grandkids. You are better at everything. When you've been with your guys and you're drinking some brand of water and you're shooting things and you're talking about Jesus, and so you just come back better to me. And that's a historic image of a man presenting himself to his wife, having come for his fellow knights, having come for his fellow warriors, and he flings himself up and he represents himself to his wife. And that's really kind of what we need to do. But if I say my best friend, well, now everybody else, all the other males in my life has gone down a click. And that's not good for her. It's not good for me. It's not good for everything. The Kingdom of God, Nashville, whatever organization. Yeah.
I'm totally a better husband, better dad after hanging out with my guy.
Absolutely, because if you're in my band of brothers, you've got a bunch of guys kicking your butt to be a better husband, right? I mean, if I gain a belt loop, my guys say, hey, what's going on? And I'm going to just land on that for just a moment. In our especially in our church and Christian worlds, which I'm all for, we got a lot of guys who have what we call accountability groups. Accountability group is where you drive across town once a month, sit at the breakfast spot, tell a bunch of guys what's wrong with you so they can help you figure it out and pray for you. Well, if you're waiting for me to figure out what's wrong with me and then have the courage to go tell you 3 weeks later, I'm going to be dead. I need to have men walking closely enough with me that they notice the extra belt loop, that they notice that I'm checking out the backside of waitress when I got this wonderful woman at home. What's going on, Stephen? They hear the angry, bitter cell phone call. They watch the 1 glass of wine turned into 4 glasses of whiskey every night. Whatever's going on. And I even have in my band of brothers, because I travel so much, I have a low-grade addiction to Oreos. I really enjoy Oreos.
And those favorite cookies.
Oh my gosh. And so I don't really eat.
I can't order this.
But I enjoy it. Well, I think that's why they put it in rows. We can just suck the right out. But all joking aside, Oreos has become the code word for food in my world. I travel a lot. People feed me like a Hindu deity. But they'll call me on the road. So how the Oreos doing? What they're wanting to know is, are you eating too much? Did you work out?
Yeah.
You got a big old basket of crap in your room that somebody gave you, and you're eating everything by the mouthful. They're asking about that stuff because they want me to be a good man. And if you don't have that, if you don't have men who know how men can lie, or, that the foibles of a man's soul, you're not being made better. We can fool our wives. We can't fool our daddy brothers.
How much of that is my responsibility to bring something to the guys versus them asking enough questions to get to the truth? Does that make sense?
It's 100% both ways.
Okay.
If you're in my band of brothers, I'm going to present my life to you and invite you into it. My band of brothers, they've been called dad, been called my kids. They have. And they doubt that there's anything wrong. I said, hey, I insist every year you check in with my kids. And me too. I do the same with them. We're all equal.
Yeah.
But it's also their job to be curious and ask. I had one of those NFL guys in my home, and he came up to me and said, "Fool, you don't know what your son's doing." And I said, "Let me tell you, guy." He said, and he met with my son, took him to lunch, came back and said, "But with your permission, I'm not going to tell you what's going on, but I'll fix it." I still, to this day, don't know exactly what he was talking about, but I so trust him. Mm-hmm. And because he had a different life from me, he knew what was going on when I didn't. Mm-hmm. So curious, engaged, involved. So it is a 100%. I think the only way it works is when there's 100% two-way. You want your life to be open book to them, and they got to be curious and asking questions and going, wait a minute, what happened? What does that look like out on your wife's face? Or what's going on? Whether you were gone how long? Or, I'm sorry, you were traveling with that secretary I saw last week. You're traveling alone with her?
Right.
No.
Right.
I mean, that's just how we talk for each other.
Because you talked about a free fire zone in your book as one of the elements of the Band of Brothers. And there's also on, the responsibility of me to engage that.
Yes.
It's a free fire zone, but it's also hey, this is the crazy thought that went through my head the other day. It's a safe zone for me to come in and say, hey, here's all my crap, dump it out.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And then I would like feedback on that, So I hear you say it's 100%, 100%.
It's 100%, and all those. Polite social boundaries, right? If we're a band of brothers, I will ask you about anything. We have just agreed to turn off the offense syndromes. We just agreed to turn off I'm very private. I'm a Yankee. You just don't, that kind of stuff. No. We're in the South. Well, I would never, kind of thing. Yeah. But
it's good accent. I
was raised by a Southern granny, fried chicken and made chocolate cake for me. So all that's to say, we got to turn all that stuff off. Look, if we're a band of brothers, you can address anything you want to address, and a free fire zone means anything that needs to be said will be said to make us better than. And what makes the very little makes me angry in that world. But one thing that does is the whole, gosh, I hope somebody talks to Chris. They all know Chris is sinking and falling apart, but I hope somebody talks to him. I don't want to offend him. I don't want to overstep. Screw that. Chris's life, his soul, his role as a man is what we are most concerned about, other than smacking him around on the basketball court. And we do not hesitate to ask the questions that we can.
That has to be there. The care for your soul has to be.
It's an aggressive
in order to
absolutely
in order to earn the spot to say, all right, now we're in.
Well, one of the things I love about man lore is
because I let's be honest, it takes a long time to get that point for me, my friendships, to get to the point where, all right, you've earned it, I've earned it, we're here together.
Yeah, you don't want to hand the keys to somebody who has an urge there, but you got to. But we do. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to all of us. We do have to reduce the time it takes for somebody to earn the right to speak to us.
Yeah, and that's what I want to talk.
Can't go on for 40 years.
Is the how? How do we get there? How do we facilitate that? It is busy. I'm 38. You're 47, little older than 38. We're in the throes of it.
Sure.
Yeah. In the throes of this. So how do we make that a priority, looking and building that? And honestly, we were talking about this yesterday before we came on. It feels like even harder it would be to have guys that all are overlapping. It's one thing to have some one-off soul-caring band of brothers, but to have them all know each other too.
Right.
That's PhD stuff. And so help us Help us understand how to really do that practically.
Well, you're halfway there because you want it. That's the main thing. Most guys don't want it. That's why they don't have it. The second thing is, you've read the book, so you know the way. And on my team, we talk about 3 being a relationship. 3 being mean building your band of brothers in 3 Bs. So 3 be a relationship. That means you take a relationship that's already in your life. You start to talk to the person about what they know about manhood. How do you learn about manhood? Are you interested in being a better man? Hey, how about you read this book? John Eldredge, Mansfield, whoever. I throw a book and say, hey, read that. Let's talk about it next week over that steak. And you start to find out, this person interested? Are they gifted? Are they out with you? Is it like their jets? Is this something they're passionate about? And you begin to find out if there's somebody who might be in your band of brothers. Then I'm a big believer in the idea that you need to have a diverse band of brothers. Okay. So I don't want you to have a bunch of white guys your age, with your look, with your culture, who work in your company or wherever you work, right? Yeah. I want you to have diverse. So I've got a little bespectacled Asian accountant who laughs about that all the time. Says I am his card says classic Asian bespectacled accountant. I've got 2 gigantic African American former NFL guys.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think you. I'm not saying don't have to. I'm not certainly not talking about going woke here, and I'm certainly not talking about just doing it for show. But you want people different from you. You want people different now. We've got a guy who was mired in sex addiction for a lot of years. He smells it on us a mile off. Yeah, if I just take a second look at the cover of some magazine and walk down the airport, he's on my phone. He just has a supernatural sense for it. Yeah, but I don't have any problems in that area, so scan me. Go for it. You know it better than I do. Scan my son. Scan people. So my point is, you got to want it, and then you've got. I think the most operative, the most important word in the title of the book that you're talking about is build. You have to intentionally build this. The whole point is it doesn't happen naturally. When I start talks, I show pictures of bands of men throughout history, on the Western frontier, and paintings of people we know to be actual, genuine guys during the time of Rembrandt or whatever. And I say, guys, bands of brothers for these guys were easy. It was normal. Native Americans, so off the tribe lived together, and they taught each other, and they initiated the boys. It was all part of their lore. Same on the frontier. Today, it doesn't happen accidentally. So you've got to build it. You've got to be intentional. And that's what our fathers should have taught us. No stink on any of them. I'm not picking on them. But they should have said, you graduate from college, you get a job, you start building a band of brothers. That's how fast that should have gone. And these days, with the temptations and the fact that we can watch the nastiest porn on our phone over lunch and all that kind of stuff, we need guys in our lives who care about us. They want to see it be a success. In fact, if I had my way, every man's best, the best man at his wedding would be his lifelong band of brothers. I know it can't happen that way. It couldn't happen for me, but that would be my dream.
From a practical standpoint, a little bit, this might be a little in the weeds. I started thinking about reading this. I have 4 men who I would consider each of them an individual brother. We're not a band of brothers yet. It's kind of like we have a little bit of a one-on-one relationship with each of them. The thought of bringing them together, just from like a practical standpoint, I'm like, man, I'm having to think through, is so-and-so are they gonna mix well together? Is that something you even have to think about, or is it just dive in, bring them together and figure it out?
I lean towards the latter.
Okay.
Because it's the rough edges, the stuff we got to get over, the stuff we got to get around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The fact that we're different, that actually makes it work ultimately. I don't mind that you have to get over, I'm making up the name here, Joe, who's in my band, Brothers, I've invited you in. And suddenly you got to get over the fact that he's, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
We've got some rough edges, or doesn't like, a black guy doesn't like Southerners, he's a New York black guy, whatever. My group's so diverse, or sometimes they go, what are you talking about? So all that to say, I lean towards the fact that it ought to be a little difficult. We ought to have some hurdles. We don't need to be social glue. We don't have to be relationships management. The hell with the brothers. I like that. One of the things I love about men is you get a bunch of guys that pick up basketball game. They don't even know each other's names. Yeah. They start coaching each other, right? Hey, I'm open underneath. Throw it down, or go ahead and take the shot. We start coaching each other without even knowing our names or where we live, or ever see each other again. That's what a band of brothers is, except it's long term. So my attitude is get over it. We're here to save each other. We're here to help each other. Me do the work of Jesus. I'm just talking about we're here to help each other, make each other great men, and that has some obstacles. So you got to get over my rough edges. Tough. Jump in.
I've become slightly obsessed with the concept, with this idea of tending my field.
Good.
It's something that I'm even, I fished the book last night. I'm just thinking about how to introduce this idea. I have 3 sons, 2 of them are teenagers right now. Where did that idea, that concept even come from for you as you started thinking about that?
It's really hard to define noble man. I mean, before we started this podcast, it's like, all right, well, we're going to start talking about manhood. You know, and you're like, he put it into a couple of words.
I love it. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm running everything.
So did they foster valid.
Yeah. I will feed credit to his words.
Sure.
Well, at about the time that I began to understand the psychological concept of a man's total body responsibilities, I'm not trying to show off here, but I read biblical Koine Greek, and I was reading Corinthians in Greek. And I came to the place where Paul says, I will not boast beyond the field assigned to me. That field even includes you Corinthians, okay? And both to the science, the psychology, and the language merge, which is often the way it is in my head. And I suddenly realized what Paul was saying, that the Greek word is metron. There is a measured space assigned to me, is what Paul said. And it includes you Corinthians. I thought that's a great concept for what it is with a man. So as soon as a man is old enough, and the Jews tell us it's about 13 years of age, I'm sort of the psychologist, so I'll go with teenage years. As soon as you hit teenage years, and you're old enough to have responsibilities that you're held accountable for, there's a field assigned to you, right? 13-year-old kid, you're responsible for the yard, you're responsible for your grades, you're responsible to do clean, righteous dating, responsible to be, whatever. You got the job, Pizza Hut, and whatever else is going on there, wherever else you worked out with your parents. This is your clean room, etc. You do that, we take care of you, we're happy, we're pleased with you, etc. It's going to change. Turn 16, it's going to be something else. Now maybe college search is included in that. Maybe bench press has got to increase. And, whatever. But this ought to be a dialogue between a father and son, mother and a son. We ought to be teaching them that concept. For any stage of a man's life, you've got a body responsibility. So life's not only those things. And by the way, those responsibilities are not only drudgery, right? Like if I'm looking at you guys and we're talking about even the field assigned to you to this season of your life, I'm talking about your workout. I'm talking about your fun with other men. When was the last time you read a good book? When was the last time you took a trip with a bunch of guys and blew it out, right? That kind of thing. It includes all the things that are good for you and make you healthy and where you're helping the things you're responsible for flourish. Well, we should teach that concept. So when I do get away with guys and do retreats, stuff like that, I'll actually have them write it down and tell me what are the things, right? And what's likely to change? And when will you know when that season change? Well, a lot of our time now is spent with my wife's mother because she's in her last days. When that happens, that'll be a season change for us. Okay, well, what will it look like then? And what's going on with you and your age and your health? And how about your career? By telling men, look, be intentional about understanding what is the field assigned to you for this stage in your life. That's how you are a good father. That's how you're a good tender of your own body and soul. That's how you're a good Christian. That's how you are a good in your career, right? What do I need to be tending to be effective at Ford Motor Company or wherever I'm making that, wherever it is you work? And when you teach guys to think that way, then they get intentional about keeping the total body of responsibilities into something they can handle. You remove stress and burnout. They're not doing less than they can be accountable for because then you don't have progress. They're not doing more because then you have burnout. They learn to make sure that they're not required to say grace over more than what really fits and what's really the priority. Man, wife's thrilled, kids are loved well, home is tended, your body is strong, and maybe next year we're going to run for Congress, or maybe next year I'm going to whatever, maybe that MBA, but at least and you're intentional about it. And what happens nowadays is things just kind of fall into our laps from the various things that put things in our laps, even benevolently wives and kids and so on. And a guy ends up being stressed and burnt out and 40 pounds overweight and not handling. So I think this is a godly concept. I think it's a Christian concept. I think it is a concept that men ought to think in terms of. Even when I teach non-Christian guys, or just military guys, don't even know what their faith is, I'll say this is a key concept. Now I'm going to use Bible language, but I'm talking about a psychological concept here. And they lose their minds because this is, especially like in the military, they're handed so many of their responsibilities, they don't really get intentional about the rest of the stuff. They're just in survival mode about everything else. Well, that means they're going to get spit out of the military machine after a 20-year career, and they're not going to know who they are. And that is a serious crisis that goes on in the military. So I strongly recommend that men get intentional about identifying the total body of responsibilities, obligations, and even privileges and joys for every season of their life, and be aware when those seasons change. I think that leads to success of every time.
It's so good.
And it's helpful to ask the question of like, what is that mine to carry right now too?
Exactly. How'd you get that responsibility? Wait, I'm sorry. You just said what? You mow your brother-in-law's yard?
Yeah.
And I because I'm an outsider, I can just pick on him a little bit. No, I'm sorry. He's got photographs of you having breakfast with Satan. I mean, how did he blackmail you into doing this? And he'll go, well, I don't know. I ever did that with that. You know what I mean? I mean, the widow, yes, but your brother-in-law. And sometimes people just absorbed obligations and stuff, and that's where burnout and stress and disharmony is coming from. So intentional is the word I say over and again. Be intentional about your life. Take responsibility.
It seems like boundaries are really important as you're thinking about
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. Many times, I kind of surprised Belle when we were early married. Somebody would contact me, and she had known me. Years ago, she and her husband attended a church that I pastored, and it just looked like we were taking on every responsibility in the world. But me personally, I'll go, that's not mine to pick up. If somebody else wants to, that's fine, or we can just let it go as a staff. But that's not for me. And people didn't know that that's how I thought, because I had this concept even back then. And man, it has made me more effective because now you come to all of your obligations with fresh energy. I'm going to love my wife. I'm going to be energetic with my kids. I'm going to take care of my home. I'm going to take care of my investments. I'm going to make sure we're all walking in the faith. All that gets energy, because I don't have 92 things that somebody just threw into my lap and I said, okay, I'll take it. And it wasn't mine.
Yeah.
And then you're resentful and bitter and ticked off, and you find yourself at 55 going, what has happened to my life?
That's it. Nailed it.
I'm all in on this concept of a band of brothers. So I am curious. I know we need to be intentional. Is there, I think you mentioned earlier, I feel like part of this problem that men suffer from is and I'm the same way. I've got a ton of text threads on my phone. A lot of connections. Do you feel like social media has played some role in this, in helping us feel like we're more deeply connected than we really are?
No question. It's an art. As much as I enjoy and I'm grateful for social media and to use it right, really be an educational thing and open your mind to the world and all that, I'm thrilled with that. However, it does give an artificial sense of relationship. And the studies and stories that I like to repeat are where the person with 25,000 people who seem to be real intense on whatever social media channel they're on will suddenly say, hey, I've noticed that 95% of you are around the Cincinnati area. I'm going to be at such and such a place at 2:00 on Saturday afternoon. Come see me. And no one shows up. So 95% of 25,000, this is a true story, 95% of 25,000, it's more north of 20,000 people. That and online, like, hey, you're the man, I'd love to get with you. You're awesome. This is great. We're real close. And yet showed up down the street on a Saturday afternoon, couldn't get one. So my point is, enjoy it at the level that it is meant to be, but it is not even what we're doing right here. Flesh and blood guys sitting in a room talking about life. It's just not going to happen. So I think it has its place, but the mistake is when we mistake it for something.
Adopt it as reality. Yeah.
And so I think there's an artificial view.
My introverted spirit doesn't do a lot of social media. But he's good at it. I'm really good at it.
It also depends on what you do in social media for. I actually have hired people who do social media for me. Many of the companies that we know about and love do. But I'm not mistaken that for relationships.
Yeah.
I'll never see those people. I'm trying to get them to buy my books or show up at an event or go out in the world and do good stuff or consider the possibility that Jesus is actually who he says he is or whatever I'm doing on social media. I'm not mistaking that for real flesh and blood relationships. So I think that it's important stuff. I'm glad we have those tools. And I spend a lot of money on it. I've got people full-time working in that regard because I'm trying to impact the world with a message. Even the great man stuff that we do, the message of men on social media all the time. But Lord have mercy, I would get up in the morning and think all those people love me or thinking about me.
Right. So you defined Band of Brothers in the book, obviously, and we kind of touched on accountability groups. I grew up witnessing men's groups, especially in the church. Small groups, men's groups. The men's fraternity, there was no lack of men's groups in the 90s.
Yeah.
You define it very simply as you're just doing life together. And so I would love to know practically, at your stage of your life, what does that look like to you? Is it lunches? It's phone calls? It's hanging out? But what do you guys enjoy doing? How does all of this come together for you, and how you do life together?
Well, after we made the commitment to each other, after we've said, we are a band of brothers, and we are going to help each other be better men, then there's a regular get together. And we don't have a Tuesday night at 7. None of us have the schedules that allow that. A couple of the NFL guys are really famous. I'm not going to mention that we committed to not tell other people who we are, but very well known, traveling all the time. But we're on the phone constantly. We're checking on certain things. We know the kind of thing, like if one of the NFL guys is going to go do a certain thing and it's a high booze thing and he's got booze in his background as a problem, we're going to be troubled. We're going to be checking. In fact, when I need to go with you, I'll cancel my day.
Yeah, we send somebody with him.
We'll do that kind of. And he's not like shaking to reach for the beer, but we just want to make sure that he's good.
But you know each other so well that
yeah, and NFL stuff. Always with the white powder, always with the girls, always with the booze. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, always with the trippers and the whores. And to be in blunt, but he doesn't want any of it. He's got a great wife. He's a deeply devoted Christian and a husband and a father. But that doesn't mean somebody's not going to show stripper in his room and lock the door. That's just the kind of stuff they do with each other. So we need to have somebody go with you. We will. But we're not the kind of guys going to sit in a room and read a book together and do a book study. But we'll all read a book at the same time.
Okay.
And then we make sure that we're all on a call fairly regularly, about once a month. And every year we take a trip together. Every year we go somewhere. Yes, I mean it's just cigars are on the fire and how you doing? And I screwed up here. Or I tell you guys, you got to help me or whatever.
Just getting away.
It's just getting away.
It's a great rhythm, though.
It is.
It's a great rhythm.
And I know so many varieties of bands of brothers. I know a bunch of airline pilots. I think I described them. There are a bunch of airline pilots. They are a band of brothers. They only fly together every so often. So when they do, they then plan a layover next day and so on. And they've been allowed to share with me the cockpit recorder, or the recorder. I think I'm saying that right. We got the plane, they're over the Pacific and the plane's flying at South Base. They turn to each other. We'll say, okay, well, tell me, how's it going with the whatever? Yeah. And they say, well, then we sometimes could get the airline to let us have those recordings. We like to remember that. It was 6 hours of all of us sitting there drinking coffee and letting the plane fly us up. And they do that way, and they also do it with Zoom, and they also do it with phone calls. And then military guys who are together intently for 3 years and then they're out, but they maintain that relationship. So then they do it by Zoom, and then they get together every so often. There are different paces, and some are really intent. Man, it's a meeting every week, and that's just what they enjoy. It's what they want to do. I couldn't possibly do that. I might have been in town every week. But the main thing is that free fire zone. Whatever needs to be said to make you better. Whatever I find, newspaper article, book, video, let's watch this film, watch this one guy, what's he going about? That reminds me of some discussions we've had, that kind of stuff, And a lot of stuff's being put on the grill, and, we're having a great time. And sometimes there's sports with that or not. My band of brothers, I'd be the least athletic guy in the room, and I'm pretty athletic. But these NFL guys, they'll just go run a marathon, and I'll go stick their way at them. So I'm not even saying that they're all about the sports and all about the basketball. But my point is, it's about being in each other's lives aggressively. And
so pick up a phone, cook something, get away.
Absolutely. Yes.
Know what's going on in each other's lives.
Yes. And this involves the whole family, by the way. My wife knows exactly who to call if I'm out of town and there's a problem. And any of these guys call, they wouldn't be rude and invade our privacy, but she can answer me questions she wants. Whatever. You got a regular section. You paying the bills, whatever they want to ask. I don't care, as long as they're not rude. I'm happy to be accountable to any of it. And it keeps us all straight. It's not just because I'm Mr. Clean. I also, in the back of my brain, I'm like, I better be good. Right? I better be good. I got 5 guys going to land on me like a ton of bricks. And they won't put up with it. They want me to be a good man, and they're devoted to it. Some of these guys, they know what it's like for a man to train for a profession and then go be in the Hall of Fame. You follow what I'm saying? So they when they see me slacking off, they're on me, and I'm on them too.
That's good. I'm all in for that. I'm all in.
You got to be intentional about it. And in your case, because where you're talking about having a bunch of guys that you know individually, I mean, it'd just be time to throw all this, put them down in the same van. Go up to the mountains and hike or whatever, or go ski or do something aggressive, crazy, jump out of a plane.
Yeah.
And then go get a big old steak and start talking about what it means to be a man.
It feels risky. It feels a little bit risky to me just because it feels weird that I'm the common thread for them.
Why?
I don't know. There's something inside me that's like, am I being selfish by trying to pull together these men?
Well, if you try and wrap this around you, the answer.
That's definitely not the case.
Then I think you ought to, I've reversed this interview now. My point is that I think you ought to consider that the good that's going to happen in these men's lives is going to be so amazing that you ought to get over that little hurdle in your soul. How do you think you made it? I think it's somehow about you.
Yeah. It is, I do feel like we are desperate for it. I feel like men are desperate for this.
They're absolutely desperate for it.
And, you mentioned 37 or 38. I'm 47. Life is going on. You have 3 kids. I have 4. My first has just become an adult. 2 teenage boys, a younger boy. Like, life is so incredibly overwhelming in moments.
Yeah.
That just, to me, magnifies the need for it. But yet it also is fighting against that. The time and investment it takes to.
Yeah, and I'm older than both of you, so I can say, the fact is that your life picks up speed, and then we have a point where you don't have that bandwidth anymore. You get to 55 and you've never had a band of brothers. Statistically, it's not very likely you're actually going to do it.
Yeah.
Right, because you just developed your pattern, just sit home alone, to watch TV. You got your whatever, your made peace, gets your casual relationships.
And this is when your time comes back.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's the crazy part.
Exactly.
And invested.
Well, now you have a lot of. It's like trying to pick up golf when you're 70. If you haven't ever done it before, you aren't going to have the muscle memory or the sense of need for it. Yeah. And so that's why earlier, if I had my brothers, so I have been able to push some young guys into this, but if I could get 16-year-olds to, right? Why not have a band of brothers, of guys who are already on the football team, you're already hanging together, but you guys are putting in a little bit of extra amount, helping each other keep clean and helping each other, walk through life and be good men. Why not? Why can't it happen at 16, right? Our Jewish friends have a bar mitzvah, a young man of 13, and consider him a son of the covenant, and they own responsibility for the community with the adults. 13 years old, why not?
Yeah.
In the American Civil War, there were generals who were fighting at 13 or leading troops at 13. They were so good in the field. So I think we have expanded childhood beyond it.
What we need 1,000 degree artificially.
So by the time you get to 55, you have 50 years, 45 years. You haven't developed that muscle memory. I'm sorry.
I gotta get some. I gotta get going. We gotta get going. I'd pay. We gotta get started. I realize I can do this alone, but it's gonna be a mess. It's gonna be a mess. That's what I realized. So
I don't know that you can do it alone.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I did it for a while.
Yeah. You can manage.
Yeah,
you can manage and manage.
My question is why? Why? And I know you're setting yourself up for a little attack here, but
well, it is.
Why do it alone? It's more fun. It's more effective. Scripture says many hands make light work. It's actually easier. I have 5 guys saying, dude, you gotta stop thinking that way. It happens faster than if one guy goes, I think maybe you ought to rethink that. You know what I'm saying? Just jump in on it. It's more fun. It's more rowdy. It's more effective. No, I'm telling you, life is short. Life is short, and
it is important.
As the military says, a few years on a wake up, you guys are going to be 80. Going, why didn't I do that? I'm sorry. That's how I just talked to all men. Get on it, man. You'll be thrilled you did.
Yeah.
I want you somewhere in a year. I want you somewhere singing my praises, going, man, I'm so glad you did with that.
Hey, I'm trying. I'm diving in.
Building your band of brothers, Stephen Mansfield. Where can we find more about you?
StephenMansfield.tv is my main website. We do a website for men called greatman.tv, but my personal is StephenMansfield.tv.
Okay.
Stephen spelled.
And you're on social
media. The only way that ought to be legal, which is PH. Yeah, all over social, all over.
The civilized spelling.
Exactly.
Yes.
And all that we do is Great Man on Twitter, X, or all of that stuff. Just
Great Man.
Great Man.
Cool. Okay.
Everything we do for men. We do a Great Man podcast. I do a Stephen Mansfield podcast that's on public policy. and I do a Great Man podcast that's all about what we're talking about here.
Yep. We get like 1% of you today.
Yeah.
There is a wealth of knowledge in here.
Here's what
You're a history buff.
Yes.
Too. A lot of people don't know.
Yeah. Well, here's what you have to do. You have to feed me and bring me back on the phone.
Hey, let's do that. Let's do that. We'll find time. Stephen, this has been an absolute pleasure. And I got to tell you, you win the award for using the word rowdy in the best possible way. I love it. The book, you've mentioned it several. I love when people use that word. It's not used enough.
Yeah.
You use it really, really well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very well. I'm going to tell Rachel tonight, you know what he said a lot was rowdy. Yeah, sure. I think we need a little more rowdy. He said our marriage needs to be rowdy. It needs to be rowdy.
I love that word.
I love that. I also use the word awash, which, by the way, you don't hear that. That word's not being used enough in your modern descent. But anyway, hey guys, it's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for being here. Keep coming back, y'all.
Hey, thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to check out the other videos on our channel and make sure you like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos.
And if you're tired of seeing our faces talk, you can go the audio only route and catch us on Apple and Spotify. If you do that, be sure to subscribe, give us a rating and a review so that we can reach more people.
See y'all next week.